It's starting. It's starting. You're live.
Yay! We're live.
Hey.
This is DJ Hamouris, supported by Erin Mae again today, and we are talking with Karen Alley from Winnipeg, Ontario, right?
No, Manitoba.
Manitoba. See, my Canadian education is poor.
We're kind of right above the border between North Dakota and Minnesota.
Okay.
Like an hour north of that.
Okay, that's great. Well, thank you so much for taking the time from your incredibly busy schedule, all the things that you are and do. It's amazing. Karen is going to be one of our Hammered Dulcimer teachers for Dulcimoon in January. By the way, the registration should open on November 20th. And we've got the whole program worked out. We now just have to get all the digits in place on the website so you can all register soon. So I'm excited about what you're going to be presenting for us too, Karen. It's going to be fun.
I hope so. I plan for it to be fun. So.
Oh, good, good. We're hoping for no weather problems for the internet in January, but we figured for an online festival doing something in January, nobody wants to travel in January.
No, this is ideal, especially speaking as somebody from Winnipeg. We're known for cold. It's Winterpeg is the
Winterpeg. I like that.
Yeah.
So tell me, how long have you been playing hammered dulcimer?
Oh gosh, I guess I started 2004, 2005, somewhere around there. So a lot longer than I would have guessed. So yeah, 15, 20 years, 18 years, something like that.
That's great. That's
so
fantastic.
I started when I was in high school, which I feel very lucky for that because I got a lot of kids aren't exposed to the hammered dulcimer. And so I was lucky to run across it and to get started a little bit earlier than a lot of people have the privilege to do. So
how did you run across it?
Yeah, that's a long story. So I have wonderful parents who were extremely supportive of my music journey. And again, I was very privileged that they were able to support the music journey in a lot of ways. And they let me try all sorts of instruments growing up. I think I was just searching for my instrument. And so I played flute all the way through school. And that was kind of a staple instrument for me. But then I tried a whole bunch of other things. I tried some guitar and some oboe and some voice lessons. And we had a bowed psaltery and a banjo and a mountain dulcimer. And my sister was a viola player. And we found out that my great-grandfather's fiddle was sitting in the attic, actually in pieces, and they found his fiddle and put it together for her, and she started playing some fiddle music on that. And before that, she'd had an old fiddle from eBay, and so of course now there's a fiddle sitting around, and I was like, well, of course I'm going to play the fiddle. And my parents got really excited because they love folk music. They're like, both our kids are playing folk music. Let's go to a folk festival. And we went to the Cook Forest Folk Festival in Western Pennsylvania. Unfortunately, one that doesn't exist anymore. But we went out to that festival as a family, and it became very quickly very obvious that I was a terrible fiddle player. But Mark Wade was at that festival, and I saw him play Flight of the Bumblebee on the hammered dulcimer, and I said, I want one of those. And my parents said, maybe you've had enough instruments by now. But I was really serious about this one. It took me about a year of convincing them that no, I promise I'll play this one for sure. And we went back a year later. Mark was there again, and bought my first dulcimer and went to a Mark Wade workshop, and he wanted us to retune a note, and I got scared of changing my notes on my brand new dulcimer, so I walked out of a Mark Wade workshop. As my very first workshop I went to. But it was kind of history from there. And actually for my birthday a year later, my parents got me a lesson with Mark Wade, and he really gave me my start in all of that, and it was history from there.
Well, intimidation with a new instrument is an old story.
It was the Pink Panther, and we had to retune a note, and I was like, I don't think I can do that with a
And now you can laugh about that.
Yeah, for sure. And I think he can too.
That's cute. That's fun. So how did you stick with folk music, or what kind of music did you find yourself playing?
Everything I could think of. So yeah, a lot of folk music. So growing up, my dad plays the guitar and he'd sing to us a lot out of the Rise Up Singing book. So I've played lots of that kind of thing. I did a lot of playing in churches. So I do a lot of hymns and that kind of thing. I love Celtic music. But I also, anything I can play. I got really into Disney for a while. There's some great chord structures in Disney songs. Yeah, they're really fantastic challenges. Popular music, anything I can play on there, but I'd say folk music is kind of the mainstay of what I've learned and done. Yeah.
That sounds great. That sounds great. So are you composing?
Yeah, to some extent. I think I arrange more than I compose. That's where it's just what I like to do best, I think. I do some composing for sure, and I think I compose in, I don't know, kind of a way that is specific to your instrument, so I like to just kind of play around on those patterns that just are really satisfying on the hammered dulcimer and build based on that. And I think that's true on a lot of instruments, is that there are just kind of ways you compose on your instrument that are very specific to that. So it's usually less, I know a lot of people can come up with the tunes in their heads and all that kind of thing. And I'm not quite there, which is maybe why I like to arrange a lot more than I like to compose. But I do love that time of just feeling around the instrument and figuring out what feels satisfying as well as
right.
Yeah.
So when you talk about the patterns on the instrument, one of the things I love is to watch hammered dulcimer players. I love how now we can have a camera directly on the instrument while you are playing. And I've watched, everybody in quarantine, but one of the players I really enjoy watching is, of course, Tina Bergman is amazing.
Yeah.
But Colin Beasley, he does different stuff, doesn't he?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. But that whole hammering patterns that I am beginning to recognize when I hear them and see them. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah. I guess there's a few ways to think about it. So I think one of the reasons that I really clicked with this instrument is that I'm a very visual person. So, I played piano from when I was really little, and that was great. And you can kind of see some shapes on there, but I wasn't very good at that. They're all in one line, and it was hard for me to really see that. And when I got on the dulcimer, it's I can see how this all fits together, and I can follow those patterns and use that as a way to connect to the music, which is something that I just hadn't found before on other instruments in the same way. So there's that way of thinking about it. The other way that I tend to think about it, so I'm a scientist when I'm not a musician, and that I think factors very strongly into how I approach my playing and how I approach my teaching in particular. And when you really get into the way that the hammered dulcimer is laid out, it's incredibly mathematical. It's incredibly patterned. I mean, all music is mathematical, at its root. But again, I think I can see that. I can see how all these fit together and how you can transpose things and how you can add to things and so having that really systematic layout is I think just works with how I think about the instrument. And I do think that depending on which background you have and kind of the language you speak on the instrument, you tend to find different patterns. So I think I have a very characteristic way I play based on how I think about the instrument, but you'll watch somebody else play and they'll move in completely different ways around the instrument that I would never have thought of. And I find that just so exciting about this.
Yes, it is. It's funny. I was just finishing up a composition this week, and after I tabbed it all out, wrote it all out on tablet it, I looked at that and I went, I think I'm overly fond of triplets.
Yeah. I mean, I think we all have those things, right? And especially when I learn something new, if it's a new ornament or something like that, I'll go back and kind of listen to stuff that I've done in the past, and you see it everywhere for a while. Like it just ends up in everything I do, and then it kind of move on to the next thing.
I went through my middle string phase of arranging for a long time. But it's good to break it up and make it be something that if you're attracted to it, you're not going to be the only one that's attracted.
Yeah, for sure. And I also think it's really interesting, especially if I mean, this is one thing that I tell my students is, as much as you hate it, record yourself. At least I hate it. I've always hated recording myself and listening to myself, but I'm so grateful for it down the line, and if you can just let go of the perfectionist part of that and be like, just record where you are right now. It doesn't even have to be for anybody else. Record it for you. And I think it's fascinating to go back and hear those phases that I've gone through, like it's kind of a chronicle of my own story with the instrument. And it's fascinating then to be able to hear it a little bit objectively and think about what worked and what didn't in those. And happily, usually I think it works. So even in retrospect, and it reminds me of things that maybe I haven't thought of in a while that I can incorporate it into what I'm doing.
So you mentioned you're a scientist. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, so I'm a glaciologist. I study glaciers and ice sheets, and I am a professor at the University of Manitoba. That's what brought us up to Winnipeg just a little over 2 years ago. We've been up here. My husband's also a scientist. So this is a totally different kind of part of my life. I do a lot of traveling, so I've done a little work in Greenland. I've been to Antarctica. Recently, I've been doing field work in the Canadian Arctic. And then a lot of my work is computer based. So I spend a lot of time looking at satellite imagery and working a little bit with numerical models. I love the research side of it. I mean, it's fascinating to be able to learn brand new things and things that are very relevant and matter a lot to the world today. I love the teaching side of it though. And this is one part that my two worlds really overlap. So I do get to teach college classes and mentor graduate students and undergraduate students. And that's really, I think that's my favorite part of the job is getting people to really dig into the details and get into those aha moments. And it's the same thing teaching music. And so very, very close parallels in those two parts of my life.
You say that there's stuff that you're researching or looking at with the fieldwork and doing the data collection that is very relevant. Talk to me about that.
So my really kind of the big picture that motivates my research program is understanding how sea levels are likely to change in the future and how they're changing now. I call sea level rise a here and now problem because it's not some future thing that we might someday have to worry about. Florida is getting hammered right now by another storm, and those storms are always worse when your background sea level is higher. And the biggest uncertainties in future sea level come from the ice sheets, and in particular from the western part of the Antarctic ice sheet. So there's a section of that ice sheet that basically, when you think about glaciers, usually, that reach the ocean, they kind of flow downhill and they reach the ocean. And when they melt back, they kind of melt out of the ocean and then they slow down. And it's a kind of a sad demise, but it's pretty predictable. Problem with the West Antarctic ice sheet is it's not really flowing downhill. It's so big that it just kind of flows over topography, and it flowed into a low spot and then up again. And actually, most of the West Antarctic ice sheet is sitting way below sea level, like a couple of kilometers below sea level. And so when you melt back, when you warm the ocean or change the circulation, both of which we've done in West Antarctica, and you start melting back the front of the West Antarctic ice sheet, as it retreats, it gets less stable. So instead of kind of melting out of the ocean and sitting there and being predictable, it gets into deeper and deeper water and bigger cliffs and things that can fall apart in ways that we've actually never seen before in the record that we have. And what we expect is that if we destabilize West Antarctica, and we're trying to understand whether we have or not, it will basically fall apart all the way back to the Transantarctic Mountains, and we'll get about 3 meters of sea level from that.
Whoa.
These are huge numbers, very, very important things. The whole Antarctic ice sheet holds about 57 meters of equivalent sea level. So if we melted all of Antarctica, all of the world's sea levels would go up 57 meters. Like, we're not talking small numbers here, but it also means that, so we're not going to melt all of Antarctica anytime soon, but even a small percentage matters a lot when you're talking about that much ice. And right now we're looking at areas, so we're studying a glacier, which is part of West Antarctica. It's kind of a fast flowing part of it. It's a little bit bigger than Florida. So we're talking huge areas. It's really difficult to get the data we need. They're really remote places, and our computer models are catching up fast, but there's a lot we don't know and don't have in our models yet. So we know the direction it's going. We understand the physics. We know, kind of where it's going, but trying to constrain exactly how quickly those changes are likely to happen is a really difficult thing to do. So that's what I'm part of this huge community that's trying to figure out how quickly this is happening.
And how much time do you spend in the field?
Not a lot, well, especially recently with COVID, but so I've only done one Antarctic field season, and that was right before COVID, and that was about 2.5 months in Antarctica. So when you do get down south, it's a big chunk of time. Most of my work in the Canadian Arctic, I just go for a couple weeks at a time, so it's a little bit easier to manage. But yeah, actually, it was really tough when I was in Antarctica. So summer in the southern hemisphere is over, our winter in the northern hemisphere, which means that we were there for Thanksgiving and Christmas and New Year's and all that kind of stuff. And I really struggled. It was my first time really being away from home for the holidays, and we're all out, it was just 11 of us on the team camped in the middle of nowhere in Antarctica. And my whole team was like, why didn't you bring your dulcimer? We could have Christmas music. And I was like, how am I going to bring a dulcimer to the deep field in Antarctica? Like, this is not a reasonable thing to do. But I missed it, and they missed it. Like, it would have been really wonderful to have that music. And so I came back and I contacted Sam Rosetta. And I said, Sam, I missed my dulcimer. I need some, can you build me something that I can take to the field? And he did. We spent about a year really going back and forth with designs and thinking about what would work and what wouldn't work and why and how to take care of it, all that kind of stuff. And he built me the most beautiful little travel instrument, carbon fiber travel instrument. And it turned out to be the last instrument that Sam Rosetta ever built, because we
Wow,
suddenly after that.
what a story.
Yeah, so I haven't been back to the Antarctic yet, but Sam's dulcimer will go to Antarctica someday. I'll play the hammered dulcimer on the Antarctica sheet. So, yeah.
It's quite a dedicated job.
Yeah, 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 but it's hard it's really important stuff, and it's fascinating stuff. It's a terrible, weird contradiction when you see things changing as a scientist. It's fascinating. That's how we learn things, is when systems change and you can see what's going on and you get really excited. It's like, wow, that's how that works when it changes. And then you step back and you get really sad because these changes are very scary and very serious. And so it's kind of a weird line to live on in this field. Yeah.
So you have music.
I do, and thank goodness.
Yeah.
It's a side of my life that balances me. Some of it is that existential dealing with what it is we're seeing all the time, and some of it's the practical. It's between the teaching and the research, and I'm still fairly new in my position here, and we're transitioning back into in-person teaching and all this kind of stuff. It's been a really, really rough semester, but it's a tough job. It's a whole lot more than 40 hours a week, for sure. And having that music side is just in that I guess more mundane, practical way of, I need that to get me away a little bit from the stress of the job. I'm sure many people feel the same, is that it's an escape from the stress of day jobs. And yeah.
Some people talk about the flow, being in the flow of whatever their art is, whether it's writing or visual art or music or dance, and being able to just be present with that in the moment. And that is one of the gifts I feel like music teachers bring to our students is here, it's not about getting it right. It's about doing it.
Exactly. Yeah, no, I always talk with my students about how part of loving your instrument is loving your practice time. It's not something that we practice for the sake of someday being able to enjoy our music. I mean, there's a little bit of it. From time to time, I work on exercises that I don't particularly enjoy, but it is important to recognize that as part of the reward of being a musician is getting to spend that time practicing and making that just as much of a goal as a performance or yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
We were talking a little bit about on your dulcimer journey, who mentored you and how you went through things, and how, as in your science life, you were looking for women mentors, how you you ended up with a lot of really great male allies, men who were really excellent at what they were doing and saw something in you. So talk a little about that.
Yeah, no, it was interesting just when TJ asked me to talk a little bit and to reflect on my women mentors in the dulcimer, and of course that led me to reflect on my women mentors in science as well. And I've had some wonderful women mentors, but mostly they've been male. So Mark Wade was my first teacher. I worked a lot with Ken Kolodner, and from there I worked a lot with Dan Landrum. I've gotten, again, I was very lucky to have parents who took me to a lot of festivals. So I've gotten to work with other teachers there. Stephen Humphreys has been somebody who's given me a lot to think about. Rick Thumb has been incredible with giving me advice as I kind of launch my own, teaching journey in this. Steve Yulberg gave me my first festival job and really helped promote me that way. And I mean, these truly are allies. Are a lot of the people that I've worked with are male, and I think that is pretty demonstrably that men have been dominant for a while in terms of the numbers of who's teaching in this field, and it's not. I don't think that they cared at all whether I was a male or a female, and they just cared about that I was passionate about this and was ready to get myself to the next level, and they were ready to dig in and help me with that. And I couldn't be more grateful for all of those allies. There's certainly I those are the people that I worked with most, but there certainly were women to inspire me. Fortunately, that is also something that I'm really lucky to have. I early on listened to a lot of Maggie Sansone's music, a lot of Karen Ashbrook's music. I've gotten to take some workshops with her at festivals as well. I worked just a little bit with Tina Bergman early on, and then so I lived in Ohio before I moved to Winnipeg, quite close to Tina and Mark, and so I got to work together with both of them, which getting to work with your teachers, I mean, is just an unbelievable feeling. I think I've told Mark a few times I still haven't gotten over it. Being on the stage with these people.
Right.
I haven't really gotten past that, but Ruth Smith is another person that we took classes together. I think we were in some of Dan Landrum's classes, both as students, and so I feel like I've gotten to kind of grow with her into a new role in this community, which has been really wonderful.
She's a little more quiet in the community, but she has such a sweet presence.
And such sensitivity in her playing. And this is really interesting. So I had a conversation with Dan at some point, Dan Landrum, and he came up to me and he said, I don't know what it is, but you just have a feminine touch on the instrument. And I said, Dan, I don't have a feminine touch. I just don't hit it as hard as I possibly can. And he said, well, that's what I mean. It's really interesting. But I think that's kind of true, that for some people Ruth Smith, I think, really embodies this, that she lives kind of on that sensitive, lighter side of the way that she plays. And to be clear, Dan is also an incredibly sensitive player. It's a very different style than somebody like Ruth plays. And I certainly don't want to deny that, but I think that's one of the really valuable things, you know, whether I was directly working with women in the community, I was at least listening to them.
Mhm.
And whether it's men or versus women, or just, you know, having a full spectrum of personalities and backgrounds, and that diversity of people to listen to, I think I need that. I need to understand that range of ways that the instrument can be played.
Yes.
And I think that I was incredibly lucky to be exposed to all of those influences in my dulcimer journey.
And we're all getting exposed more to each other's playing and each other's offerings through things like Quarantine and the other virtual events that are happening.
Yeah.
I swear, the Quarantine instructors, we egg each other on to greater heights.
Absolutely. And this has been the major silver lining of the pandemic from my perspective. I, you know, accepted this job here in Winnipeg, actually well before the pandemic began, and we had a while to wait before we came. We moved here in the middle of 2020. And one of the really difficult things for me about accepting this position was there are basically no dulcimer players up here. I know of a mountain dulcimer player who's up here, actually, who I connected with through Quarantine. But, you know, I thought I was going to lose the dulcimer community when I moved, and I knew that I could still play on my own, but it'd be really hard to have that community. And then the pandemic happened, and thanks to Quarantine and other virtual events, I still can't believe that they shifted this community online. I mean, just the tireless work that went into giving everybody the tools they needed to understand how this could be done and proving that it could be done shifted everything online. And I can't believe that that's happened. And I went from feeling that I was going to lose the dulcimer community to feeling more connected to the community than I've ever felt before. And that I cannot overstate how grateful I am for that. That's just
Me
been
too.
absolutely incredible. And I played at the Northwest Dulcimer Rendezvous that Mick Doherty leads back in May, and that was my first time being back to an in-person festival, and it was so good to be back. I love playing with people in person, but I am equally grateful that the online festivals like Dulcimoon and Quarantine and other festivals are continuing, because, well, I can get away every once in a while. It's a long ways from Winnipeg, and it's a really busy schedule that I have, so it's hard to fit it all in. But in this way, I can be connected and work with people from all over the world, and I haven't gotten over that either. The fact that I can sit here on Zoom and be like, yes, let's play the dulcimer. And I can talk to people. I have a student in Germany that I work with once a month. And maybe I should get over that at some point, but I haven't gotten over it.
It's exciting. It's exciting. Yeah. You know, I have two students who both are in Manhattan some of the time, and Long Island some of the other time, you know, and it's like, wow. I have to introduce them to each other. And it's all online. So yeah, it's great. Yeah. You know, the Quarantine folks did a survey. I'm going to wrap this up soon, but they did a survey after they've been doing the festivals for a year. And of the 2,000 people who participated in the festival, fully 60% had never been to an in-person festival.
Oh, that makes me so happy. I mean, I'd love for them to get to an in-person festival, but the fact that we can reach that whole new population is so exciting.
Yes, it's very exciting. So that's one of the reasons why I started Dulcimoon, because it seemed to me that we could certainly handle one more festival, and because of the broad spectrum that we have in all these others, like North Georgia Foothills is coming up, right? There was room for one that's woman-led.
Yeah.
Why not?
sure.
Let's shine a light on the women, and everybody gets to enjoy that light.
Yeah.
Right. So thank you for being part of it, Karen. I'm going to
Oh.
ask Erin if there was anything in the chat that people wanted answered.
There were no questions today. You were just so thorough. But Gina did say that her father-in-law was stationed at the North Pole for 13 months. So
Oh
she
my
was
God.
relating to you having adventures in cold places.
Yeah.
Well, this will be available for replay too, Karen, and I'll try to send you the link in case you want to share it around. You're welcome to. You
Sure,
can
yeah.
download it.
And if people have questions later, I'm of course more than happy to chat.
Absolutely. I'll tag you. One of us will tag you if we see a question aimed directly at you. But I'm so delighted to have you be part of the Dulcimoon maiden voyage.
I am very, very grateful for the opportunity.
You're welcome, hon. All right. Thank you. And we're going to say goodbye to our live audience now, and we'll see you soon. Take care.
Bye.